Hey friends, before we jump into things, wanted to give a quick update on the tour. The stop in Charleston October 7th has been canceled because of Hurricane Matthew. I really hope everyone stays safe down there. The stop in Clemson on October 8th is still on. It will be at 5 p.m. in the Hardin building, room 100 on the campus of Clemson University. And October 9th, I'm also going to be visiting with the Piedmont Humanists in Greenville, South Carolina at 11 a.m. I'm going to have all of the information in the show description, so if you're in either area or close and maybe want to make the drive out to collect some hugs, that information will be in the show description.
Exclusively on Secular Media Network, this is the Gaytheist Manifesto.
Hello and welcome to the Gaytheist Manifesto, your source for news, commentary, discussion, and debate at the intersection of the atheist movement and the LGBT rights movement. I am your host, Callie Wright, joined by my co-host, Ari Stillman. What's up, Ari?
It's late September, so ho ho ho, Merry Christmas to all.
Yeah, are we doing this already?
I mean, I'm sure the stores are probably already doing it.
I know
they've had Halloween stuff out since at least the beginning of September.
Yeah, I actually saw someone on Facebook say that they were just done with everything because they saw the first Christmas commercial on TV.
Oh my God.
And this was I think this was at least a week ago, if not 2 weeks ago. So, yeah, it's bad.
Ugh, I love Christmas, but I hate Christmas music because it's just the same songs over and over and over, and they never stop.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about Christmas. Anyways, we can make a whole new episode out of that. So this week,
Christmas edition,
right? So this week we're gonna have a conversation that I've been wanting to have for some time about queer and trans representation in the media and in films. Our guest is Savannah Rodgers. Savannah's a filmmaker based out of Lawrence, Kansas. She directs, writes, and produces content through professional amateur productions. Her short film Sketches premiered at the Slamdance Film Festival. Savannah's directorial debut, Politically Correct, is also on the circuit and has received accolades from Kansas City Film Fest, the Kansas City LGBT Film Festival, and other festivals worldwide. Her documentary work has also been featured on Films for Action. Her new series, Polly, is currently being crowdfunded on Seed and Spark as a part of the New Voices Rally. Savannah, welcome to the Gaytheist Manifesto.
That is quite the intro.
Yeah, I know.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, I felt like I'm not going to condense the bio. Like, if that's what you sent me, cool, I'm going to go ahead and read that. So, so Savannah, tell us about your work. Tell us about what you're trying to do in film.
Hi. Well, thank you for having me on the show. First and foremost, I really appreciate it. My work is primarily LGBTQ oriented. I try to do a lot of comedy work, and what I seek to do is by making people laugh. I want to make people think about the status quo and think about why aren't they making their work more diverse, as I try to make mine representative of a lot of different intersections of identity. So Polly is a series that my partner and I have written together, and now we're crowdfunding to have the opportunity to get it a premiere at Series Fest, get it a TV development deal potentially, or get it straight to series order at a network called Full Screen.
Very cool. So tell me about Polly.
So Polly is the story of a polyamorous triad that moves to the suburbs, much to the chagrin of the rest of the neighborhood. And they're trying to fit in. And
comedy ensues.
Right, exactly. I mean, just the premise, you can imagine a lot of comedic possibilities, moving to the conservative Midwest, trying to conform to the idea of a nuclear family, but also not really fitting in enough with the heteronormative world, but also not fitting in enough with the LGBTQ community because of the goals that, these three characters have. Very cool.
And so I actually can't think of any mainstream representation of poly relationships. Am I missing any that you're aware of?
I would say Big Love was the biggest representation of poly relationships, but it was also kind of shown through the lens of a Mormon sect that kind of existed outside of the Church of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah,
and
different context,
more
I guess.
Polygamy.
Right.
Yeah, but I think that's the only big representation of polyamory or polygamy, whatever you want to call it, that I've seen on TV. And that was a huge show, but it's been a while since it's been on, and we're trying to show poly relationships through a different lens and a different kind of time in our history.
That's really cool. And I gotta say, speaking of, comedy, cause I wasn't, you sent me links to some of your work, and, I didn't get the chance to watch all of them, but, the Welcome to MA short.
Oh yeah.
My God. So first of all, before I go on about this, is because I know, like, you had to give me a password to get into this. Is this something that people can go see?
This isn't something that people can see yet, but our short film, Welcome to MA, we created it for the Kansas City 48-hour competition. We won an award there, and we're going to put it out on the indie film circuit, and eventually it'll be available through video on demand for people to watch. But if there's enough of a demand, I can make sure that we get it done quicker, and maybe, we can make that something that contributors to the campaign can see if they really want to see it.
Good deal, because my God, like, I was dying. I won't give it away because I think
figuring out what the title means was part of the appeal for me.
Oh,
so,
absolutely. So I'm just gonna leave it there and just leave it to people's curiosity. And you can reach out to Savannah if you want to see it, and we'll and we'll go from there. So what got you started in filmmaking?
I get asked this question a lot, and I think people are always kind of surprised by the answer given the kind of work that I do.
That's good, because it's a super, super generic interview question, and you have to save me with an interesting answer.
Well, the movie that really got me wanting to make films is Chasing Amy, and a lot of LGBTQ people have a problem with that movie because of the way that they're looking at it. But the way that I always saw that movie is that it was a kick-ass movie about a pansexual, bisexual woman who wasn't going to take shit from toxic nerd masculinity. And I thought that was awesome. And it also deals a lot about love and loss in relationships. And that was always really compelling for me. And I've just always been in love with that movie, but even how controversial it is within the LGBTQ community, if you can call it a community.
Yeah. And so tell me why do you think it's important for queer and trans people to be involved in this work? We talk a lot about representation, and I've done some sort of monologuing on the show before about, why it's important for us to see ourselves in art generally, but, specifically the kind of art that's consumed on a mass level, like TV and film. And
because we're pretty and people need to see us.
Well, I mean, I'm into that too. Like, it's like just straight vanity. Like,
I'm my
good.
Beautiful trans body.
Yeah.
That's why I go speaking on the weekends.
Right. So talk to me about, why you do this kind of thing specifically, as opposed to more mainstream kind of things that might be a little bit easier to get success with.
Well, honestly, what I want to do is combine the idea of, queer content combined with ideas that are really popular within the mainstream, because there's a reason that a lot of those movies are successful on a mainstream level, because they're universal themes, they fit in with everybody. It's not just like a very specific kind of story that I feel is told a lot through the LGBTQ genre, i.e. coming out stories. I've been to so many festivals where sometimes the only LGBTQ representation is a coming out story, or, dealing with being closeted or something along those lines. But what I want to do is kind of shift the conversation to, okay, these people are out. This is a little bit different. And not that necessarily everybody needs to be out to have a successful life as an LGBTQ person, but I do think that applying stories that people already like and they enjoy to the LGBTQ genre will be able to introduce a lot of these ideas into the mainstream more. And so the idea of representing these people, if you see yourself on TV, you exist. There's that validation that you are a person existing in the world, and other people are going to acknowledge it too. And so that's a big part of why I want to represent LGBTQ people, people of color, people with disabilities, learning disabilities, etc.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of objectifying, isn't it? Because, and this isn't obviously the case universally, but, a lot of times when I see these kinds of things, like, it really comes off to me like, this is made for cis and straight people, by cis and straight people, using us as a vehicle.
Of course, and that's a lot of what
Look
you
at
see.
how progressive we are. We have a trans character.
Right.
Well, a lot of what we're seeing, I think you could call Oscar bait or festival bait, where you have a moderately good actor playing a trans role that's cisgender or something along those lines, or gay. Like, not that I think that straight people should be able to play gay characters. I think it's a different story for playing trans characters, but that's just my worldview.
Well, talk to me about that. Why do you think that's different? Because that's something that I had on my list. I wanted to ask, so you brought it up. So yeah, so what's the difference there in your mind?
Jen Richards brought this up while talking about a controversy with Mark Ruffalo's new film that he's producing.
Another thing I wanted to talk about, so this is good.
Right. And she made an excellent point by saying when audiences see a cisgender male in a transgender female role, they just see trans women as men, and it results in violence. And that's an excellent point, and something that not necessarily everybody thinks about. In an ideal world, everybody could play any gender and it would be taken seriously outside of like the realm of like comedy and drag, which I think is fantastic when anybody does drag in a respectful way, like they do on Portlandia. But the idea that, cis men are seriously playing trans women, it's become problematic because it is resulting in violence for trans women, and that's just not acceptable. So, and there's a big difference between, playing sexuality and who you're attracted to, because that's just empathy, if you ask me. Acting is empathy. And so if you're doing that, that's not a big stretch, but playing the idea that there's not enough representation, it's resulting in violence. That's why trans men shouldn't play, straight men, cis men should not play trans women. There's so many different modifiers.
It's queer alphabet soup and word salad.
Right. I think if I had one critique of nomenclature in the LGBTQ community, it's like just have words that are more inclusive, that are not so complicated. But the world's not like that, so we'll probably never get that.
Yeah, and for context, what we're talking about, because I know in certain circles this was kind of big news, but some may not have heard of it. So Mark Ruffalo and Matt Bomer, and Matt Bomer was a star in a season of American Horror Story, if memory serves.
And he was on White Collar, and he's a brilliant actor. He was in The Normal Heart with Mark Ruffalo. I love that movie. He's such a good actor, but I think he made just a poor choice. Yeah,
so they're making a movie about a man who is, depressed and suicidal, decides to make a change in life, moves in with a sister, and begins a relationship with a trans sex worker. And I just, in my mind, I'm thinking like, there's part of me that wants to give, like, I always in a sense want to give things and people a chance, but in my head I know where this is going. And so Jen Richards, so for those who don't know, she is the producer, actor, creator, writer of the YouTube series Her Story, which is fantastic. It's just like 5 or 6 10-minute episodes on YouTube. You need to go watch this because it's incredible. If you're a trans person, it is almost the penultimate, like actually seeing yourself in this. And then if you're not, I think it's a kind of a good, sort of a good entree into, what it's sort of like as a trans person, and how hard it is to navigate the queer community sometimes as a trans person. But she posted on Twitter about this whole situation, and I thought this entire thing was brilliant. So I'm just gonna read it. I auditioned for this. I told them they shouldn't have a cis man play a trans woman. They didn't care. I've made this point in a few interviews, but never on Twitter, so let me lay it out. Reasons not to have cis men play trans women. First, there's the practical economic one. It denies actual trans women opportunities, jobs, resources, which hurts the entire community. Then there's the aesthetic. Now, I agree in principle that anyone can play anyone. As an artist, I want that kind of freedom myself. But, and I think that's an important point, because like you said earlier, Savannah, I think in a perfect world, anyone should be able to play anyone. If this art existed completely free of context, I don't think it would be such a big deal. But she goes on to lay out the context. Having trans people play trans people allows for more informed, subtle, and authentic performance. It makes for better art, which is the point. There's a reason why her story has resonated so much with trans people and why we love Laverne Cox, Jamie Clayton, Angelica Cross, etc. Eddie Redmayne, who played, I forget her name, in The Danish Girl, Jeffrey Tambor and Transparent, and Jared Leto from the Dallas Buyer Club are great actors, but we and those who know us see the difference between them and us. Cis audiences reward them because they see being trans in itself as a performance. Trans actors rather perform the story, not our gender. But all of this pales to the main reason not to have cis men play trans women. This is the reason that's making me cry as I type this. It will result in violence against trans women, and that's not hyperbole, I mean it literally. Cis men playing trans women leads to death. Here's why. I've spent years looking at violence against trans women, particularly who does it and why. I talk to survivors. There's a pattern. Straight men are attracted to trans women. They always have been, always will be. We are some of the most popular sex workers. It's a fact. But they're afraid that being with trans women makes them gay/less masculine. They seek us out, enjoy us, then punish us for their anxiety. Let's be more direct. They have sex with us, worry that makes them gay, then reassert their masculinity through violence aimed at us. Back to the point, why do men who aren't attracted to men who only date women think being with trans women makes them gay or less masculine? Because culture as a whole still thinks trans women are really quote-unquote men. Decades of showing us that way in shows. It's been internalized. Again and again, cis men play trans women in media with the furthest reach are rewarded for it and tell the world trans women are really men. When Jared Leto plays Rayon and accepts his Oscar with a full beard, the world sees that being a trans woman is just a man performing. When Matt Bomer plays a trans sex worker, he's telling the world that underneath it all, trans women like me are still really just men. And that is going to lead to violence. Not to me, likely, but to girls already most at risk. Any cis men who do this have bloody hands. I'm not some screechy activist. I mean all of this literally. It's happening all of the time. The stakes are life and death. Our women are dying. I'm a filmmaker. I hold the freedom of art sacred, but I also recognize its power as a responsibility. We shape perception. We are culpable. Dear Mark Ruffalo and Matt Bomer, if you release this movie, it will lead directly to violence against already at-risk trans women. You will exacerbate the cultural belief that trans women are really men, which is the root of violence against us. That was a whole really long thing, but I don't think it could be said any more perfectly.
No, she's brilliant.
And again, I just have to reiterate, her story is fantastic. You need to watch this. And interestingly, she was just cast in a show on the Country Music Channel.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that they're doing more original content. I noticed that because Joey Lauren Adams from Chasing Amy was cast in the show called Still the King with Billy Ray Cyrus. So I'm interested because of that, but I was mostly interested that the Country Music Channel was doing original content.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, and there's so much controversy with this. I mean, and there's even this new Michelle Rodriguez movie.
Oh God, I just learned about this last night and spent half an hour reading reviews about it. It's
so
a cluster.
Yeah. So for those who haven't heard, Michelle Rodriguez plays someone who is forced into sex reassignment surgery or bottom surgery that trans women typically have to surgically transform a penis into a vagina
as
revenge. And then the movie is like her seeking out, the people who did this to kill them. And the outrage is obviously predictable here because that's just, it's outrageous.
Who even thinks that's a possibility, even in the ridiculous upside down world, that's a punishment, and then suddenly, because that happens, you're no longer your gender that you identify with?
Well, I think it stems from something that we talked about, because a while ago we did an episode about surgery, and we talked with other trans people about, the real conversation about surgery, like why it matters, why it's necessary, and what it does for us in our lives. And I think a lot of times what it comes down to is a lot of times when people ask that question, they ask it in sort of a fetishizing way, because a lot of time, and I, I don't mean to stereotype and say like, oh, if you ever ask a trans person about surgery, you're being awful this way. But
of course,
a lot of times when those questions get asked, it's specifically because people want to be shocked by the answers. Because it's just so outlandish in their mind that I don't know. It disgusts me, but it does not entirely surprise me that this is a story that popped into someone's head.
Well, and also that it got a premiere at Toronto because it had 2 A-list actors in it. That a story like a total trash story like that can get into Toronto because of quote unquote star power, and that's wildly disappointing.
Yeah, well, and that's so often the argument that is made by producers of movies. Like, when The Danish Girl was made, there was obviously, the same sort of outcry, and the producer's response was like, there aren't any trans A-listers. If we don't put an A-list actor in this movie, it's not going anywhere.
That's a bunch of bullshit, though, because there are plenty of movies that get critical acclaim that get a lot of support, where the lead actor is not necessarily an A-lister, but if you have a good supporting cast that maybe are a couple of big names, you're going to get the same effect. And I just kind of think it's BS that they wouldn't bring somebody new into it. Like, I'm in the industry, I know the excuses. The excuses are bullshit.
Yeah, if the actor does a good job, they're going to become an A-lister because of this movie.
Right. I mean, just look at what people have done with a lot of movies, like Jennifer Lawrence in Winter's Bone. Not a trans story, but she was on the Bill Engvall show before that, and then that skyrocketed her into this really huge career. And that was an indie, and it didn't have an LGBTQ story, but that's just an example of how someone who's kind of a newcomer was able to, skyrocket, not having been a name before, but having a brilliant performance. And so the excuses for that are BS. Maybe it's harder to get funding if you don't have a star, but if you have a really good supporting cast that are big names, the point is moot, in my opinion.
Do they have to be born a celebrity in order to get a role in a good movie?
Right. Well, and I'm interested, I mean, as a person who does this kind of thing, I'm interested in, where you think that comes from, because I want to be charitable to people, right? Like, I don't honestly think that these filmmakers are sitting around like, we're going to cast another cis person in a trans role. F those guys. You know what I mean? Like
it's not like that.
Yeah. That's silly.
They just don't know. Yeah. They don't know, and they don't educate themselves because they don't think it's their problem. They don't think it's their job to seek out, how should I go about this respectfully? They hope for the best, and they're surprised when there's backlash because you didn't consult with anybody whose story this would actually affect.
Yeah, and it happens so often. See, that's the thing. Like, I have a hard time believing that it's ignorance. You know what I mean? Because there was the same backlash with Dallas Buyers Club. There was the same backlash with The Danish Girl, and here we have Anything. And
Well, the thing is that those movies were successful. They were rewarded. Yeah. So, of course, people are going to continue on that path because there's not actually been a real problem in their eyes because those movies made money. Those movies got a bunch of awards, and they were critically acclaimed. They don't actually give a shit what the community thinks, I don't think.
So Mark Ruffalo responded to this whole thing, and it was it was one of those things where it's like you can tell he's being sincere, but it's just like swing and a miss on the point. It was something along the lines of it's wrenching to see you in this pain. I'm glad we're having this conversation. Like, it's time, it's time for us to have this conversation. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, this conversation's been happening forever. Like, the least that you can do is pretend, like, recognize that the conversation has been happening and you just haven't been a part of it. And that you've not paid attention to it. And that, like, because Jen Richards apparently auditioned, in her tweets thing, she mentioned she auditioned for a role in the movie. She didn't audition for the main part, but she auditioned for a role in the movie because apparently the movie was made with Matt Bomer in mind in the first place. But I mean, she says that she told the producers while the movie was being cast about her concerns. So it's like, ignorance is not the reason, I don't think. And I will also go as far as saying that I don't even know that not caring is the reason. I'm on this kick lately where I'm like really trying to dig in the heads of people who do these kinds of things and figuring out why. Because I think painting these people as monolithically evil is unhelpful and probably, and it's not even accurate, but also unhelpful, like, to solve the problem. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
It might be rooted in industry nervousness because it's so based on money. And if you don't make your money back, if you feel like you're not going to make your money back because of a decision you make, that provides a lot of anxiety. I'm not saying that's right, but I'm saying that is probably a symptom of what we're dealing with here.
Right.
Yeah,
you have this small community that wants to be represented accurately in their movie, and I'm sure they listen to some of those concerns, but then you have this much larger group of the general population that wants to see these big name actors in these movies. And they're going to go with the opinion of the larger group because they want to appeal to the most people. Mm-hmm.
And actors come with a fan base, and if they already have a fan base, the less you have to spend on marketing, stuff like that. I think it's all purely business decisions that are a bit myopic, to say the least.
No, I think that makes a lot more sense, because I have a feeling there's probably a producer somewhere that's like, oh my God, I really want to do this. And then there's a studio exec that's like, I'm not going to fund your movie if you do. So you can do the movie I want to do, or you can not do it. And the producer's like, well, like, I have to have a job and feed my family. So like, I'm just going to go ahead and do the movie. Right. So yeah, it's definitely more complicated, I think, than, simply like, well, they're not listening and they don't care. And, at least I hope it is.
Right. I think we're on the right track in terms of that. It's hard when you're doing it indie because you want to find the appropriate people for the role. But if you live in a smaller market like I do, I live in the Kansas City market, and there are not out trans actors around here. Like, I've looked up and down. I've been on Backstage. I've been to all the the agencies looking for trans actors, non-binary actors and stuff for movies I want to do. But the closest place I could find somebody that represented what I wanted was in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, wow.
And that's tough. You have to scour the internet for talent that's gone largely unrecognized. And there are some, A-list, B-list actors who are, trans or non-binary, like Amandla Stenberg and Miley Cyrus and people like them. But it's also like, how are you going to get that if you have a budget of $20,000 for your entire movie?
Right. Somebody has to be feeling very, very charitable.
Right. Well, $20,000 is a lot of money in general. It's not a lot of money to make a movie.
Right.
So it's like finding, and it's just tough because something's got to give when you want to cast a trans actor, but you have to pay for their flight and their hotel and their day rates. And then you also have to pay for, 20-something crew members who have a day rate that's just as expensive as your cast and all that stuff. So it gets difficult, but I know people are trying really, really hard, at least in the indie world.
I'm sure that there are actors that are closer to you. They're just, they're scared because with visibility comes threats of violence and danger and that kind of thing. So I'm sure I would be shocked if there aren't people closer to you who would like to be ideally in a film like that, who would like to be actors, but they're just, they're scared because, first of all, the whole root of this problem is they don't see their representation in the media. So people are, they're not educated about these kinds of issues, which leads again to more violence and ignorance. And then it circles back into they feel like they can't do these roles because if they're out about who they are, then they might get, backlash against them. So it's this huge cycle.
Right. And it's so tough. And I completely understand why people aren't out, or maybe why they haven't wanted to, try acting or anything. And it's tough, but I'm really grateful for the people who are out and providing the visibility. People like Aidan Dowling, who actually shared our Poly campaign on his page. I've been in contact with him, and he's a super nice guy, and he's just as passionate about that kind of stuff as I am. And he's been, very helpful in kind of getting some visibility for this project.
I read something somewhere a while ago, and I tried to find it before we did this, and I couldn't find it again. And I'm curious if this is a thing that you're familiar with. And there was a conversation about this happening. It was on a news site, and they were interviewing someone, and someone mentioned that When you're casting movies, there are things that the film industry is exempt from that the rest of the business world is not. Like, for example, you can say, I specifically need to hire a black person for this role, or specifically need to hire a white person for this role. That's obviously illegal to do in the business world, but for movies, it's obviously applied in really problematic ways a lot of times, but it makes sense to be able to say that. Like, this is the kind of character I need, so I have to cast this kind of person as that.
Right.
But apparently those standards don't apply to LGBT people. Like, in a lot of circumstances, producers of movies aren't actually allowed to ask about the sexuality or gender identity of the actors that they speak to. Is that something that you're aware of? And like, is that like totally wrong, or?
That's interesting. I've never really dealt with that, just because a lot of the movies I make, I'm friends with the actors. Like, I've formed relationships before they come in for a casting call. And, you know, I've like sought them out and I've talked with them. So usually I know, you know, what their personal life is kind of like, before they even read for a role. But that's interesting. I've never really thought about that. But also, you know, whether or not an actor is, you know, like gay or bisexual or something along the lines of sexuality, that doesn't matter so much to me if they can, you know, perform it well. In terms of if they're trans or not, I need to know that before I you know, have them audition for a role of like a trans person. So it's interesting. I think a lot of the time with like, I need a specific race for a role, I think sometimes that can be problematic, but I've tried to practice it to where, for the most part, roles are open unless there's a comedic punchline where I need it to be a dumb white guy kind of like saying something ignorant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I kind of, the idea of colorblind casting is problematic so many other times because, you know, it'll often end up in kind of like a racist way. But for me, I'm aware of these problems, and I try to make my casting calls intersectional, say, hey, trans women and cis women are open to this role. You know, I can adjust as necessary. Because that's what I do for every casting call. I believe every role, unless it's specifically for a trans person or specifically for a cis person, like if that has any kind of like bearing on the story, I leave it open to trans actors, cis actors, and pretty much actors of any race or gender performativity.
Very cool. So what's the solution to all of this? Like, it seems
quotas.
Like
Quotas.
right, it's always quotas.
It's always quotas with me.
It just seems like, you know, the film industry in general, and obviously, you know, when we're talking about indie movies, it's not the same thing as talking about, you know, movies like Star Wars. You know what I mean? Right. But I mean, I'm sure you have plenty of insight into that sort of thing as well. I just, you know, how do we change that dynamic? Because I have a feeling, just like, you know, we were talking before, I think a lot of times in industries like this, there are probably a lot of people who want to do good, and they're being held back from doing it by the people who are, you know, who are holding the purse strings. Right. And that's what it all really comes down to, is who has the money and who's willing to put in for it. And I'm fortunate to work. Well, I'm fortunate enough to work in a community where money is not necessarily germane to making something good, because I've got a lot of friends. I've got a lot of people who will support a vision, you know, and I can pay them, you know, like $200 for a weekend, and we make a short that, you know, we think is really important to us. But it's more like really money kind of rules the industry, and it's not necessarily a financially lucrative industry for the most part. I mean, you look at all these blockbusters that studios put out, and a lot of it's shit, but they'll make a huge return on one or two of the movies, and that'll get them by. Every goddamn Transformers movie yet. Ugh. God, sorry. I got a lot of anger about that. Go on. But so I think the toughest part in terms of the studio system would be to get people who really care about that and can see that past the, you know, what they're scared of. And not that, you know, I know what it's like to be a studio exec, and I don't have all the answers, but my
or maybe any answers, but my idea would be to get, some sensitivity leaders in there to kind of see, okay, well, these shows are successful. Maybe we should try to emulate those success, like Fresh Off the Boat, Blackish. Those are two shows that are doing really, really well at ABC. And so if other networks were smart, they would try to kind of compete with those shows and create more shows with people of color to appeal to those audiences, and to, really see that people will show up for these shows if they're good. And just like with any show, I mean, there are a million shows that are canceled every year. That's obviously hyperbolic, but I mean, it just seems silly, the idea that people of color won't show up for a show that represents them, or that queer people won't show up for a show that represents them. I don't know where the idea came from that only white people will watch TV.
Right. Well, and I mean, we're starting to see it. I mean, Orange is the New Black is a phenomenon, and Laverne Cox's character isn't, she's not like the title character, but I mean, she's in there and she's popular and she's fantastic. And that show is, I mean, the definition
She's
of
the
huge.
only actress from that show that I know the name of.
Right.
Well, keep in mind, that is also through streaming platforms. I think through streaming platforms, we're getting a lot more diverse content and stuff that's really representational of what people actually look like. When I'm talking about studio execs, I'm thinking like network. I mean, I think cable, like premium cable, and streaming platforms, they do a lot better about including people of color, LGBTQ folks, people with disabilities, stuff like that. But with network TV, it's still a very, very slow burn in terms of change.
Yeah. Well, in the other one,
they're dying off anyway, so we'll just let them play the dinosaur.
Yeah. Well, in the other one that I was going to mention, and this is obviously streaming platform too, but Sense8, and that's the trans character in that, and that is actually played by a trans actor. And the one of the creators of the show is one of the Wachowski sisters, who came out as trans just a year or two ago, or maybe it was longer than that. I don't know. But I'm going to be honest, I only actually got through the first episode of Sense8. I didn't honestly care that much for the show. I've been told I need to get through 2 or 3 episodes before I like it, but whatever. But I just, I've seen cis people play trans people, and it just, I don't know if it's because I'm unable to suspend my disbelief because I know that's a cis person playing a trans person, but I just don't see myself in that. It does not come off as real to me. But in Sense8 it does, because there's, they run into a TERF that is, a lesbian who's saying all these horrible things about trans people. And I mean, that happens in her story too. And it's just like, oh my God, I'm actually seeing myself there. And I think, I don't know, I guess part of the problem is that we're such a small minority that I doubt studio execs, if we're going there, would think necessarily to target us as an audience.
And that's why we need allies. It's my favorite topic. It comes out again. I think if people were more vocal about wanting these types of, inclusive casting and these types of stories being represented accurately, then people would listen to it more. But as I said earlier, we've got this small minority who want this, and then the vast majority of people who don't really care. So they're going to go with the people who don't really care. Well, if people cared more, then they would want to appeal to those people. So they would probably start doing these sorts of things more.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that's the question is, I mean, I don't know anything about the numbers, but I mean, does network TV even really matter anymore?
That's an interesting question. A lot of people would argue on both sides of that. Personally, I think there are some really good things coming out of network TV, but there's also this big fear in Hollywood of services like Netflix having a monopoly. I mean, Fox just sued Netflix for poaching employees. So I don't really know kind of which way things are going to go, but I do think TV is transforming, certainly for the better, thanks to platforms like Netflix, Hulu, all of these different things. And I think HBO has consistently been good over the years. I know they just had that new show, Insecure with Issa Rae. That's coming out, or it already has come out. But shows like that are coming on, and it's getting better in terms of representation for marginalized folks.
Yeah, well, because I was just thinking simultaneously, network TV, it's like we could do that and it might change minds, but I'm thinking like, does that even matter? Like, I don't know.
I don't know. Modern Family's won Best Comedy at the Emmys several years in a row now, and people love Modern Family, but they also think that it's kind of reinforcing a lot of ideas about what gay men are. And so there are two sides to that. But I think a lot of people, maybe Modern Family, has changed their mind about something. Who knows? And who are we to deny the importance of a show like that in a mainstream kind of sense?
Well, yeah, because I just think, if we're talking about, if we're putting everything back into context and, putting the art in context of our society, it would be awesome, like we were saying earlier, if we were just talking about the art, if we were just talking about what makes a great film, what makes a great TV show, what's entertaining and, what we connect with. But obviously, like, we have to connect that with the greater context that these things exist in. And,
of course,
I've told this story on the show before, seeing even of a sort of vague allegorical reference to gender and sexuality outside of the binary on Star Trek was everything to me as a kid. That like at least in this future world, that this I might be able to live in a world where this wasn't a big deal. And I think media can play such a huge role in normalizing those things. Like, imagine how many people who are just like your regular everyday conservative folks. And I don't mean people who are like, beaten down, all lives matter and Confederate flags everywhere, but just like your everyday conservative who, maybe doesn't care about anything socially, but they're, economically conservative. Like, how many people are going to see Jen Richards' character on her show on CMT and that being exposed to a trans person? And I don't know anything about the role she's playing. I don't know if she's actually playing a trans person or if she's playing a cis person, but if seeing that normalizes it, this is something that I'm exposed to regularly, so it's not such a big deal anymore. It's this frustrating dichotomy between, trans people and queer people have existed as long as humanity have existed, but it's frustrating how...
No. Tumblr made us up.
Right. Well, no. Tumblr made up genderqueer people.
Shing.
Sorry, Ari, I love you.
I was born out of the internet. That's why I always talk about memes so much.
Perfect. But yeah, I think it can be such a powerful thing, especially for people, because I think the people who are the targets of, like, Netflix and Hulu and all of these streaming services, I'm guessing a lot of those folks are the people whose minds don't necessarily need to be changed so much.
Right. Well, with what we're trying to do with our show, we're trying to, just get the content out there and really serve the audiences that are being underserved. And by crowdfunding the way that we're trying to build our audience and kind of just reach the people that feel like they're not being represented fairly and all that. So our show isn't about necessarily changing minds. It's about finding those that don't feel like they belong or haven't seen themselves represented. And we're trying to remedy that while telling a really funny story and making it genuine and giving it a lot of heart. And, that's important. But I think there is this sense that people just expect media to pop up that's just for them. And, they're just waiting and waiting and waiting. But what we're trying to do is give them the chance to be proactive and invest in a show that will, hopefully be there for a while, that will, give them what they want. And that's the idea behind the whole rally, is build your audience. But people need to know that it's not just going to come for free if they don't make it come.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think that's important too. That's, one of the things that I think is cool about how low the barrier to entry has gotten There are obviously still barriers, obviously money being the biggest one. Creating a podcast is, I'd say it's probably the cheapest entry into media aside from maybe blogging.
Right.
But, even doing the most basic of filmmaking, a couple $100 at least, like for a camera, even if all your actors are working for free and then all of that kind of stuff.
You'd be appalled to see how much the last 8-minute short I did was. It's ridiculous.
Oh, I bet. Well, I remember watching a music video and they're like, yeah, this video had a $300,000 budget. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
It costs money. It's a lot of labor and it's a lot of cool shit that you're trying to fit into a very condensed time period. So the fact that our budget's so low for this pilot, people are getting on early and they're giving us the opportunity to maybe get a straight to series order or, get us to Series Fest where we can find a producer or, get a TV development deal. And so by contributing even $1, that makes a huge difference for us because that goes towards getting the green light. And when we get the green light, we can make it and we can make the content that we want to give to them. They just have to want it bad enough.
Fair. So, Savannah, this has been an awesome conversation. We are running short on time. So before we go, I want to give you the chance, just plug everything you want to plug. Tell us where we can find all of your stuff. Tell us where we can go to contribute and all of that fun stuff.
Awesome. Well, you can go to my website, savannahrodgers.com, to get in touch with me, to have a conversation with me. All my social media is there, and I have a couple of shorts on the website. And if you would like to contribute to Polly, please go to seedandspark.com/fund/Polly. And even contributing $1 really helps our campaign and will help us represent people like you.
Awesome. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. I can attest to the quality of the work because you've shared some of it with me. So thank you so much for what you're doing. Thanks for taking the time to be on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a true pleasure.
Aw. How cute.
All right. I went ahead and let her go because I am a raging piece of shit and did not pull up the intro again. Or the outro again. You would think this would be a script.
You should have that memorized.
I was just about to say, you would think that this is a script that I would have committed to memory by now.
Nope.
But I don't. Because I am the fucking worst.
That's right. I agree with that.
And that, my friends, is going to do it for this episode of the Gaytheist Manifesto on Secular Media Network. Definitely, again, want to thank our guest, Savannah Rodgers, for her time, for her work, for her insight. You can find the show on Facebook at facebook.com/The Gaytheist Manifesto. You can email us at thegaytheistmanifesto@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter at GaytheistCali. You can find the show on Twitter at The Gaytheist. And Ari's got some stuff, I'm sure.
Well, before I do that, I think I should apologize for talking badly about Michelle Rodriguez and that new movie Reassignment that's coming out because it turns out it's okay, guys. She can't be transphobic because she's bi. That's what she said.
That sound you're hearing is the collective groaning of everyone who's listening to this episode right now.
She actually said that, though.
I know.
If you look at, she's like, I'm in the LGBT community because I'm bi, so that means why would I want to do something that's against my own community? Okay. Anyway, let me get this thing pulled up here. So you will recall that I had a little bit of a giveaway contest type thing where when we did the episode with Steve Shives, I asked people a trivia question about myself, and I said, I'll randomly pick a winner of the people who send me the correct answer, and you'll get an outro. So here we go with that. Let me get this pulled up here. Oh, this is really weird. I don't see anything here listed on my document. Oh, that's right, because nobody did it. I hate you all. I'm very disappointed. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not angry. I'm just a little disappointed. Okay? So if you want to make it up to me and tell me how much you love me and appreciate me and want to get an outro, except I'm not doing it anymore because that was apparently a bad idea. You can email me at aristillman4@gmail.com. Friend me on Facebook, Ari Stillman. If you really, really, really want to make it up to me, you can listen to the SJW Circle Jerk, which is my spin-off show with Jeremiah, which is on iTunes and Spreaker. or you can, send me some candy. I'm always up for that. I like all kinds of candy. I'm not very picky. I'll send you my address. If you're going to send me candy, I'm cool with giving you my contact info. So, yeah, that's the end of everything. And I give up on humanity.
Aww.
Aww.
That sound you're hearing now is the collective aww of everyone who's listening to the show.
I did have one person, I didn't ask them if I could use their name, so I won't, who messaged me to say that they are very sorry about the tortilla incident.
Good.
So that's the closest thing that I got. So thank you, person. I know you're listening to this. You're the best. Everyone else, whatever.
People
live without
love you, Ari. If you want to support the show and the activism we do, you can head to patreon.com/theatheistmanifesto and make a per episode donation as little as $1 per episode. You can also head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star review. That is equally as helpful. Before we go, I want you to know that if you're lost, you're hurting, you're scared, if you feel like no one cares and no one understands, you need to know there's a community out here that loves you, cares for you, knows that you're capable of amazing things and that you are worthy of love. If you're struggling, please don't be afraid to reach out. Until next time, friends, this is the Atheist Manifesto.